Hello everyone! It is time for Chapter 6, Festival of Life. Please enjoy and hopefully it brings you some comfort in these dark times. Disclaimer: this content is rated R18+. There may be cursing, blood, gore, and sexual content. This content is for entertainment purposes only. All rights of this product belong to the original owner of the work, Wyona A.M. Copyright: all work in this video from our audio written book belongs to the original writer, artist, Wyona A.M. This video is for entertainment purposes only. To contact the original artist for use of products shown or heard in this video, contact at YouTube channel Wham times 3 blog, Instagram Wham times 3, Twitter at mx3_WA, Facebook page Wham times 3. The program used to edit this video was Adobe Premiere Elements 2020. A light drizzle danced on the crystal glass of her window. The sun peekabooed through the dark clouds, sending gray light into the room. Good, the bed is sleeping, Kelly thought, pleased, moving to snuggle into the blankets more, only to find a weight on her bed that did not belong to her. She froze. Fear filled her, daring it to choke her to death. Memories of being raped flashed across her lids. Kelly breathed slowly, controlling her breath, forcing it to stay steady as she opened her eyes. She turned slightly and groaned to find Lito watching her sleep. His entrancing green emeralds seemed to have a warmth to them, but not like a parent watching a child sleep, more like a gentle owner watching a pet dozing in front of the fireplace. He was dressed, of course, in his usual casual dress pants and shirt, fitted with his usual black fedora. He reminded her of an Italian mobster, but she wouldn't dare to say that to his face. He'd probably enjoy the title too much. Welcome back, she said, stretching lazily, not planning on moving any time soon. She had at least had a couple of quiet weeks while he was at these meetings of some sort. She wasn't sure about what, but almost always the same group of people, sometimes at the mansion, sometimes somewhere else, where it'd taken Lito away for a couple of hours to days. Sometimes Lito would join him, sometimes not. Missed me, Pat-chan, he teased, crawling on all fours over to her, burying his face in her throat. But she turned her head to allow him access, out of habit more than anything. After over a year with the vampires, it seemed more of a routine than anything. Then again, after being forced at a church, after trying to run away, she found it easier to do as he asked or liked, and it would go by quicker and smoother, even feel good at times. His tongue, cold but somewhat warm, like someone who just came in from a snowy day, sent little lightnings tingling down through her veins all the way to her core. His fangs sank in deep and hard, first the sharp pain, then slowly the warmth that filled her body, calming her rapid beating heart as he drank. A daze that filled her eyes, and she relaxed into the bane as his body gently rested on hers. She was surprised to find herself enjoying Lito's feelings. No, this was a new feeling. She felt the dampness between her legs, and to her surprise, she was aroused. Her breast suddenly felt heavy and full. Her legs moved restlessly. A groan left her lips out of her control. Maybe it was because Lito hadn't fed for a while. She was used to being taken throughout the day. Lately, it was only once in a while since the meetings had started. Her body was letting him know how much it had missed the usual feedings. Yeah, that had to be it, right? It couldn't be that she actually enjoyed the feedings, missed his presence, right? Her mind slammed her. No, she would not admit it. Others were just the same as humans, and she was no more but food. Once Lito grew tired of her, he would throw her away too, just like everyone else did. Lito released her gently, removing his fangs so not to hurt her. Her body protested, his tongue catching the droplets of blood that tried to escape and sealed the 4 puncture wounds. He looked into her eyes. The usual possessive look was replaced by desire, dark and hungry. Her body reacted to his licking, and he pressed a knee between her legs, finding a beckoning heat. A gasp left her lips, and her legs hugged his, moving restlessly. She wanted relief. She was scared of her reactions, but she wanted relief so badly. Then she froze as the look went from desire to anger and then outrage. Had she done something wrong? Kelly panicked. His fingers grabbed her chin and moved her face sideways to examine her cheek. Who hit you? He cursed, his voice cold and hard. She blinked, not remembering anyone hitting her, well, anyone living. She quickly stumbled up, 1, wanting to get away from that cold, predatory look, and 2, to figure out what he was talking about. She ran to the bathroom, Lito easily on her heels, and looked into the mirror. There, plain as day, was an ugly, large, dark bruise on her cheek. Wow, that ghost had more power than she thought. Oh. She breathed and received an impatient growl from Lito. Ido ran up next to him, crossing his arms, just as angry and predatory as his triplet brother. She forced herself to meet their gazes and tried staying to her usual innocence as she could be smile. I was hit by a ghost, she dryly chuckled. The doorway seemed suddenly too small for Lito. No, the whole bloody mansion, including the attached bathhouse and horse barn for extra measure. And Ayato? Damn, the country didn't seem large enough for him either. They were predators, true and simple, and in that moment she saw how cold-hearted and deadly they could be. She took a couple of steps back, which only made those hypnotizing green eyes narrow. Have you ever been slapped by a ghost? It is a very strange sensation. Lito placed his hands on his hips, seeming to calm down briefly, not as badly as the predator he was, as he went into the thought, remembering the conversation they had had a while back about the ghost. She took the chance to slip by both of them and back to the bed, which was flopped on and quickly balled into the blankets. It was just a little too chilly, especially since she was dizzy from lack of blood. Lito stalked up the fire before sitting on her bed thoughtfully. Which ghost? Ayato asked. An old friend of ours, you could say, Lito said, and his brow raised an eyebrow as Kelly rolled onto her stomach, leaving her back exposed. Lito was the only one she'd ever felt comfortable enough to do so with, but maybe it was because he didn't hide his true nature. Ayato possibly, but for some reason she felt drawn towards Lito more than Ayato. She couldn't explain it. The woman's words played in her head. She said I was a slut, she said dozingly, and to leave her precious Lito alone. She buried her face into the pillow. She was too tired to talk anymore. Exams had been a bitch this semester, math and calculus, not to mention world history all at once, so she was already exhausted. I'm sorry I should have been there, Lito. Lips pressed between her shoulder blades gently. His body gently rested on hers while his fingers danced on her arms. Kelly closed her eyes and fell into a light sleep, aware of Lito's every move and Ayato flopping down in the bed next to her with an impatient sigh. I knew that woman wouldn't just vanish away, growled Ayato telepathically to his triplet brother. He laid on the bed, hands behind his head, staring up at the ceiling. We burned her to nothing but ashes, then burned those too. We made sure nothing was left, Lito replied, playing with Kelly's hair. He enjoyed his little pet, who somehow played herself into his home and possibly his heart. She had meat and muscles now, still small and thin, but she had curves. Her hips and buttocks were a bit larger than he'd expected. He ran his hands over the round curve of them. Her breasts, despite being small, seemed firm enough to eat, and the taste of her sweet blood was so addictive it was worse than drugs. The only problem was that his body reacted to hers too easily. He would find himself thinking of claiming her completely, not just drinking her blood and leaving his mark on her. When he would do paperwork, he would pray that Kelly would walk in and he could throw her on that desk and claim her over and over again. He got hard just at the thought. And the problem is, what are we going to do about our leak in security? I'm sure you will figure it out. You have always been good with those sorts of things. Lito didn't mind letting his triplet brother fade from Kelly, at least his fellow triplets. However, he did not like the thought of either of them claiming her completely. He wanted her completely his. Her body, her heart, her soul, all belonged to him and him alone. In a way, he felt like she already did, and the brothers seemed to sense it too. Aito, normally possessive, seemingly seemed to get bored or tired of her, but Lito had a feeling it was because of something else. They always had that strange connection after all, but it was stranger to have a complete stranger have just the same thread of belonging. He stroked her long black strands of hair. She sighed quietly, enjoying his touch. He could spend hours like this watching her sleep, stroking her black hair. He placed a gentle kiss on her cheek before leaving her safely in his brother's care. Aito watched him leave through the slit of one eye before rolling over and placing an arm around her. There was a problem, though. No matter how much Lito wanted to be with her, tonight there were some things that needed to be settled before he could completely claim her. One being his brothers and cousin who wanted to have some of his play toy. They already had fed from her, which he didn't like. Another was that smell. The strong, expensive perfume could only belong to one person. Zelman. The Wolfen are still at large. They make mine nervous and aggravated. Lito had to catch Kelly last night. She ran away. She also saw Grandpa on the news and knew him by name. Not too many outside the clan know that much. We believe it is safer to head to the castle with the festival so close. I would stay behind, but Lito will leave with Kelly. Also, Lito wanted you to ask Ayase about prophecies and dreams. Didn't say why, just curious. Ayato. Yes, the Wolfen cannot touch Ayase's castle. She will be safer here. As for prophecies and dreams, not sure, but there is a blood prophet who draws prophecies instead of needing to cut. Her name is Hope. She lives with the wolves who took over that village by Simon's courtyard. Meg also feels things rather than sees them. Travel with care, Zelman. Ayato looked at the response, his brow looking over his shoulder. She also saw Mother. That's why she lost her appetite. Ayato didn't like the sound of that. I would be keeping her in my room and keeping a closer eye on her. You lost control, didn't you? The way Aito had become distant, Aito already knew. They all had their demons, all connecting to that witch of a mother who birthed them. But what she'd done to Lito, it made Ayato sick just thinking about it. I'm going to bed early, Laito said, leaving, not letting his brother answer. Aito turned his attention back to the many computer screens in front of him. His fingers went across the keys. He could easily pull up all the security cameras, checking on the guards. He saw his brother walking down the hallway to his bedchamber. The hall slowly filling with lights from the twilight. Laito stood at Kelly's door. He went to knock then, forgot about it, and just entered a room. Unfortunately, there were no cameras in the bedrooms or bathrooms for privacy reasons. Aito may change that, at least in their rooms. Laito soon came out, looking around confused, and went into his own bedchamber. Aito connected with his brother telepathically to confirm that the girl was indeed in Laito's room, along with the guard wolf. She was. Aito leaned back against a chair, his hands behind his head in deep thought. Was the ghost of their mother truly haunting the mansion once again? Was she gaining her powers back again? They'd worked too hard to recollect the clan, bring them back from the bloody rain. They finally got the laws in place along with the consequences. They were finally starting to get back on the elders' good side. All this had been painstakingly long. Was it all going to just crumble down? Aito shook thoughts from his head and got up. He didn't like it going to his bedchamber. He lay on the couch in his office and waited for sleep to reach him, to still his mind, quiet his worries. As he slept, the little girl from his childhood, the girl Laito had loved so much, crossed his dreams, laughing and playing in the courtyard once again. Her purple eyes so innocent and sweet, just like his eyes flashed open, just like Kelly's. Could it truly be? The castle was large, and despite being centuries old, it looked brand new. Set off the coast of Romania, it was surrounded by deep, lush old forests to one side, and dropping off to an ocean on the other. Kelly looked out the window in amazement, Laito unfazed, looking at paperwork in his hand, and the light smile on his lips amused at his pet's reaction. "This is where your father lives?" she asked, still in awe. "No, this is Ayase's castle, but they allow our clan to use it, live in it, as part of our agreement. Ayase goes far back with Maya's grandmother's clan, the Pegasus. They are Ayase's true masters, and thanks to our clan protecting their descendants, Ayase stays loyal to us as well." "But Ayase's an immortal. How can ever believe in curses? Blood oaths?" Laito looked at her. "They are never fun, and often go through generations, even lifetimes for that matter, before the oath is finally upheld. So Ayase is connected to the clan by an oath?" "So to speak." He looked back at the paperwork. "By a long-forgotten lover, unbinding and unbreakable, but I think it has less to do with the oath than to do with those within the clan nowadays." He shut, closing his eyes. Kelly looked out the window again, down at the dark crashing waves. Kelly couldn't look at crashing waves anymore. Every time she did, an image of the red-haired boy screaming her name as she fell into the sea flashed across her mind. The boy she loved. Had he been a son? A brother? It was strange how things spoke to her at times like it knew her intimately, more than she knew herself. The vehicle pulled into a large courtyard, guarded by others in both forms. A servant led them to the room, a shared suite set with a fireplace and a view of the ocean. Dark, thick carpets and furniture dressed the rooms. The two bedrooms separated with a shared living space and bathroom that only had a bathtub to clean in. Large enough for two, even three people to fit into, much like the one Laito had in his room. She looked around like an excited little bird on their first day in the world as Laito unpacked in his room. She felt like she stepped from reality into yet another dream, but this castle didn't speak to her like the mansion did. Yes, they knew each other, but from so long ago, even the castle wasn't sure she was the same person. "Are you frozen in time?" Laito asked, drawing her attention to him and back in the here and now. "Not yet, but maybe I'll time travel into the past later," she teased. He raised an eyebrow before stepping forward, taking her chin in his hand so she would look directly into his eyes. Eyes of a predator, but for her, they strangely felt like home. "No disappearing on me," he teased back, but it seemed more like a command than a tease. He leaned in closer. She could smell his cologne, sweet, feminine, but at the same time masculine, much like him. She felt his breath against her skin, gently teasing her. He seemed like he was going to kiss her, but let her go instead. "I'm going to rest. Tonight is the festival, and I am sure you don't wish to miss that either. You should rest too." "But I thought the festival doesn't start until tomorrow night." It sounded like a complaint. She was complaining about Laito leaving her. "The main part starts tomorrow, but the festival itself actually begins tonight." He disappeared into his room, closing his bedroom door and locking it. Strange, he only did that when he didn't want to be disturbed, which never happened with her, but she shrugged it off and decided a warm bath to treat her aching muscles would be wise before bed. Laito listened as Kelly's footsteps creaked across the floor. Running water followed, and a few minutes later he heard the bathroom door close. He sighed and fell to the floor, trying to breathe, but her scent still covered him. His groin was so hard and ready it was unbearable. He could find no relief for his longing. He wanted her, damn it. He didn't understand why, but he knew she was his, made for him and him alone. That night when he realized she ran, he punished her in the only way he knew how. He wanted to take her to his room instead and handcuff her to the goddamn bed, never allowing her to move or leave again. Stupid, stupid, stupid. He banged his head against the door. How was it he lived for so long, had so much time away from her, that he still couldn't bring himself to open up to someone who meant so much to him, someone who was was meant to be his. It was obvious she was made for him. Aito and Zama agreed she was his life mate. There was no other explanation. Yes, his triplet bros were drawn to her, but in a different way. They said when they saw Laito with her, it seemed right. Meant to be. Maybe it was him who was the problem, because he couldn't believe that the goddess had truly made such a creature for him, so delicate but with a fire deep in her soul. I would never submit to anyone. Those words had made him finally give in to falling for her. All he could think about, dream about, was Callie Faith, a little lost druid. He heard her splashing in the water as she washed and jumped out the window before he found himself in there too. Vane enjoyed the nightlife, the hustle and bustle of the city, the smells that filled the air, the life that filled the walls, and the sounds that surrounded you. He'd always enjoyed and preferred the noisy city to the quiet country life he grew up in. He was able to easily blend into the city, no second guesses about his unusual exotic looks. Instead, he was often mistaken more than once for a model, which he had considered taking up. He walked through the familiar streets, coming to the place he used to have his underground bar during World War I. He mused about the human police more than once, almost fought him, but he'd used his powers and turned his drunk patrons into a book club, but one time into the furniture of his suite. The sheriff became so frustrated one time he had come back and trashed the bar, trying to get Vane out of business, only the bar was mysteriously up and running the next night. But that was a nightlife, and that time he continued walking. He remembered his old friend, who also had rare and exotic looks. Dark hair and skin with light eyes. He kept the waves long, as was the style back then. His great eyes looked into Vane's eyes. The memory sent tingles down his spine, and that dark, silky skin. So perfect. Then many a passionate night together, they'd grown apart. His friend moved on and married. His son was a good man, had his father's looks. He married a warlock, another good friend of Vane's. They had many children. Vane sighed heavily. The cafe he had first met Angela. Recognizing the fallen angel Lilith almost immediately. He remembered they were sitting there at the seat. Angela was so young back then, only in her teens, dressed in a simple sweater and jeans, her long black hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, those bright green eyes welcoming. Vane had heard that her daughter Maya had inherited much of her mother's looks, but not her gentleness or patience. She and Lilith, or Ayase, as Angela had so fondly renamed her, smiling and talking, enjoying each other's company. Ayase had turned then to Vane, her satisfied eyes warm and welcoming. He knew how special Angela would be, how open she was, welcoming Vane to their table and into their lives. The Fox brothers, A.M and Momiji, the Korean-American heritage, extremely rare for those days. A.M, with his long silver hair and Asian looks, was gorgeous, often dressed as a woman, and no one argued, and Momiji, a striking young man with boyish wavy blonde hair and bright blue eyes. And Ayase with her gorgeous albino coloring and bright satisfied eyes. Her hair was long back then, much like his. Now they kept it short, blending in with the modern times, eyes that could make any man drop to his knees and helpless. Who were his old friends Momiji and Ayase these days? Last time they saw each other was after the tragic death of Angel and Ayame. Oh God, good souls now long gone. Vane finally walked into a building. It used to be a cafe, but now owners changed and it was a bar and restaurant. Vane ordered a shot of whiskey, hoping it would warm the chill in his bones and blur the memories. He normally sipped it, but tonight he gulped it in one sitting and asked for another. As he waited for his third shot, he looked around, seeing no familiar faces. The music was different than he was used to hearing, some pop rock mix. Even the smells and sounds were different, cheap perfumes and colognes. Vane sighed heavily, placed his chin in his palm. He felt lonely tonight. Then something out of the corner of his eye caught his attention. Vane used others' memories to see the man, keeping from drawing attention to himself. A man of late 20s, Asian American descent, blonde hair, blue eyes, clear, flawless, fair skin, dressed in simple black dress jeans and a white snap-up shirt. He sat at the bar right across from Vane, simply watching impatiently. Vane gasped, turning to look at the young man with his own eyes. The man smiled, kissable lips with a cupid's bow. His blue eyes lit up, turning almost a honey gold in the light. He grabbed up his drink and left the bar. He sat right across from Vane as he smiled playfully at the warlock. Memories of the young boy who traveled with Angela danced through Vane's mind. Younger brother to Arame Venus and youngest son to Diamond Venus, from a long line of ancient knights, blood oath to protect their ancient royal family. Now that young playful boy was a man, a father and a grandfather from what Vane had heard, a boy who'd lived through losing his only brother, his father, a dear friend, his wife, losing his only son. He clung on to the only family he had left, his granddaughter Yuki, and Angela's daughter Maya. Vane could see the deep sadness in Momiji's eyes, despite the fact his face and demeanor said otherwise. He still tried to hold on to his boyish innocence, but it was hard. Came here to remember as well, Momiji asked, taking a sip of his brown drink. It's the anniversary, said Vane quietly. He remembered the horrible days leading up to that last battle. She saved them, all of them, at the cost of her own life, and none of these humans who surrounded them would ever know or understand the sacrifice she made that day. I thought you'd be at the festival. Momiji shrugged. Make it too fresh. Momiji looked out the window at the city around them. I know it's to celebrate her, to remember what all she did for us, but you can't bring yourself to attain, finished Vane, feeling the same way. Angela had been an heir to an ancient lost throne to be protected at all costs. She wasn't just some hero, some angel or goddess to be celebrated here on earth. She was a sister, a friend, a mother, a person who brought those together who had nothing and gave them a family. To others, she was a great leader, a person before her time. She alone started the beginning of peace between the others and humans. She alone got the shadow hunters and Helsing to open their eyes and see the others not as some demonic monster, but as an actual living, breathing being that could feel and love. She, along with the other archangels, created Dublin to help hold the peace treaties that were created not only in her time but for the future. She began the revolution to stop shunning mixed bloods. She ensured that the Fae had force to stop the races from killing each other and causing endless wars. How would she feel now? Conflict still arose, but not like before. Vampires now had donors, paid well, given early retirement, and there were scientists, actual vampiric scientists, who were working on creating a supplement to blood so that vampires could stop drinking blood altogether. Werewolves were no longer running wild, slaughtering everything in their path. Many had their own towns and cities where they lived side by side humans. They trained their young in spirits. What about the spirits who now provide histories from ancient worlds no longer found in text? The House of Nine were being rebuilt and were now living places and schools for their kind. What about the fact that Lestat, of all vampires, was now the founded leader, the named Prince of Vampires? His court of magnitude in the French Alps, a village of humans who worked for them and never touched by a vampire, or how Cain was working with the sages to help create a similar court for the shapeshifters of the world, the shadow hunters working with the warlocks to create a government-like system and all working together to create treaties between their courts and kingdoms so no one had power over the other and they all could work towards living in peace and harmony. All this had started with her. However, for those closest to her news, she was so much more than that, but that rarely ever goes down into history, does it? The two sat quietly, each deep in their own thoughts, simply enjoying the familiar presence of the other. The night soon grew into the early hours of morning. The bars slowly began to shut down, giving their last call. The two left the bar and walked side by side in the streets that slowly emptied once again. They heard some laughter from those still drunk or buzzed, heard the scolding of spouses, even the occasional teenager stumbling in to get caught red-handed by their parents. Even an angry voice added to the mix. Someone had been cheated at gambling. A young boy had been the victor, and the man, a motorcyclist from the looks of it, wasn't too happy. A boy of only 15 or 16 laughing at the banger and his gang. They both were obviously drunk. Vane and Momiji looked at each other, agreeing something wasn't quite right about this scene. "You lost fair and square, old man," said the boy, flinging the dice up in the air, which disappeared and reappeared in his other hand. A simple magician's trick, right? "You little cunt," the man went for the boy, who disappeared, then reappeared on the balcony. "Nope, definitely using magic in public in front of humans." Vane shook his head. It had yet to be safe to do that as of despite all the progress in the world. "Ah, to be young again," mused Momiji. "And what does that make me?" mocked Vane. "You know it's against the law to expose yourself?" asked Vane. The boy looked at them confused and started laughing, bottle in his hand. "I don't care. Let them find out. Let the whole world find out." He took a swig, then spit out, the liquid turning to flames as he turned to smoke and disappeared into the night. Momiji shied and shook his head, dousing the crowd with a memory spell. "For old time's sake?" asked Momiji. Vane shrugged, and just like the chase was on. The festival was amazing, placed in a part that looked like a ballroom except outside with open walls. A band played Celtic music, throwing the audience into a trance. Bodies swung to the music, laughter filled the air, wine, beer, meat, bread, and fruit. The smells were wonderful. The lights were not electric, but made by magic and fairies who danced around, adding to the enchanted effect. She sighed thoughtfully, looking down at the dancers. Nicholas looked up at her with a smile as he spun a young girl around the dance floor. Luca watched from above with his grandfather, Asura. Almost like twins, she mused. And Edgar, surprisingly, was also on the dance floor with eyes. He dressed in a silver dress, while he wore the traditional black. He looked like a crown prince. Tron ran around with firecrackers. Zelman watched from another corner, not a dancer, she gasped as Leito came up next to her. He was sweating from taking several dances with other girls, but he kept coming back to her, offer her one, but she kept shaking her head, giving the excuse of 2 left feet. "This is a surprise. "You think the heartbreaker himself would be down with the ladies," teased the young woman's voice walking up to them. "You think I am sweaty from just watching?" shot back Lito, taking a glass of wine and finishing in one gulp. "That was his 16th one," counted Kelly, looking over at the two young women who approached them. "Not going to dance tonight, Kira?" asked Lito, looking up at the red-haired woman while he took a glass of wine and a glass of liquor. Kira was a black and red-haired, blue-eyed, young Irish-looking woman in her mid-20s, dressed in all black. She had a full figure, much like Maya, with large, full breasts and hips, but she was mostly like a warrior. She gave the impression of a Viking or Celtic warrior princess. So far, Kelly had met vampires, shapeshifters, Sandoras, and elves, to her surprise, even some fairies and spirits, but Kira was different. Kelly couldn't quite put her finger on it. The woman with Kira was blonde with blue streaks through her hair. Now mental, not hard to miss, especially the blue dress that moved more like waves on the ocean than ruffles of a skirt. "She really does with those two are liking the elementals," said, rolling her eyes teasingly, her giggle like bells. Kelly enjoyed being around elementals. They always made her feel in peace, but Kelly's eyes turned black and fear filled her as she gazed at a predator that was the top of the food chain. One step down from the mortals made vampires and shapeshifters seem like little ants in the comparison. She'd met her kind before, long ago in another time and place, and they never wore masks back then. Old wounds began to burn from the memory of how they'd come about. "I offered once," she teased back to the elemental, and then looked at Kelly, smiling gently like she couldn't hurt a fly. "And this is the new toy you found. Everyone's been talking about your little pet." Kelly forced a greeting, stepping slightly closer to Lito, but compared to a creature like this, did Lito even have a chance? "This is my pet chun, Kelly Faith," Lito said, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Pet chun, this is Kira, the head of the guards for Isa and Maya's best friend. Since childhood," he teased. Kira rolled her eyes as the young woman chuckled. "And Stream, one of the elementals in this region." Pet chun? Are you okay?" She tried to force herself to blink or look back towards the elemental. Lyle pinched her right above the tailbone, making her jump and finally able to blink. She blinked several times, her eyes returning to the purple gold, but darker than normal. She smelled like fear, though, and Kara seemed to understand, taking a few steps back, an apologetic look on her face. "There you are," chimed a young girl's voice. Yuki, Momichi's granddaughter, almost the exact same image of her grandfather. Kelly was washed with relief. She enjoyed Yuki. It was almost like an old friend, then watched in horror as the girl skipped over and hugged Kira tightly before turning to them. The blood prophet of the family was dressed in a white dress that showed her slim figure whenever the light hit it. It reminded Kelly of a little girl's fairy princess dress with blue ribbons and white lace. "Uncle, why haven't you taken Kelly out?" she demanded, scolding Lito. "Dressed in such a nice dress, she should be shown off, not on the sidelines while you take all the other girls out." "My dear little niece, 'tis not my fault. She is shy," Lito shot back playfully. "You hurt me with thy words," he said, pressing his hand to his chest for drama. Yuki kept glaring. Kelly rolled her eyes. "Ah, and Maya is so thankful I get to see you here as well." Maya was dressed in a black silk dress that danced around her lush curves. Kelly felt a little better. Out of the entire predators here, Maya and Lito were the closest to have a chance against something like Kira. "Is your auntie taking care of you, my dear niece?" he mused. Yuki chuckled. "It's strange to be called an auntie when I'm the youngest. That's why I always call Maya my big sister. But I came over for Kira. Have you come to take care of her from us? If I can ever steal her away, yes." Kira rolled her eyes and allowed Yuki to drag her across the dance floor into the garden. "Ah, nothing's changed," mused Maya. Lito laughed, but did make a good point. "Petchan, you're putting my reputation on the line by being so damned stubborn." "I don't care. I have 2 left feet." Kelly crossed her arms, but Lito dragged her onto the dance floor despite her protest. "Nonsense. When it's a slow song like this, you don't need to worry." He pressed her closer. "Especially when you have me to lead." He teased, winking at her. Kelly glared, her cheeks crimson as they slowly spun around. Kelly was engulfed in his cologne in an instant, a scent that was only his. She wasn't sure what would be worse, being eaten by Kira or taken by Lito. As they spun along the floor, a memory came to the surface. A similar scene, a slow dance. Music played on the piano. The ballroom gorgeous as could be. Everyone watching the young couple take their first dance. The familiarity of Lito's hand pressed to her back. "What are you thinking about, Petchan?" "Nothing really," she said, getting a glance of talking with Zelman, both eyes on them. "Oh, you seem to have been taken aback by Kira." She stiffened in his arms as he spun her, then brought her back. "We are aware of what she is. We were such a strong clan because we have such top predators amongst us. We can also thank Ayase for that. If you read the history about the Coven, you would learn our clan only came so powerful after Father's marriage to Karen. Because of the oath with Ayase." She looked at him, being greeted by warm green emerald. Damn him, why did he have to be so damn good looking? Why did he have to feel so damn good against her while they danced? Why did he have to smell so good? "Ah, so you're not as naive as you play to be." She groaned as he spun her again, chuckling, then brought her back. She knew the underworld had been divided up. Very few clans with old ones leading them had come strong. Many young ones seeking the protection of the older, strong ones. Then Angela, daughter of Karen and Zelman, came with her fallen angel and changed it. She stopped the wars and started the peace between the clans, a peace that now stood on the verge of collapse. But the clans were trying to recover under the vampire prince Lestat, not even a pureblood or an ancient, and yet all looked to him for guidance. I will have to admit, though, I would like to be able to carry you away without being noticed, he mused in her ear, and the music stopped. He pulled away, which only amused me more. And that was chapter 6, Festival of Life. Just wanted to get a little real with you guys. I'm sure if you are following me, you would have seen a video I posted up today as well as this one. And basically, I've just been really struggling with my depression lately, and it just got worse around Thanksgiving. Honestly, chapter 5 probably wouldn't have been up if it hadn't been for the fact everything was already pre-recorded before Thanksgiving, and the fact that I did have that extra day off to do editing and everything. But I really had to push through to get that chapter up, and this chapter as well. Just, we are honestly in a really dark time at the moment, and part of the reason I went ahead and decided to do this with my book is to maybe bring some comfort to people. And I honestly was about to just not even continue after chapter 5 or just delete everything. But then my best friend helped me to continue and to also record this chapter, and another one of my friends messaged me and had told me how comforting having these videos up had helped her through her dark times and depression that she's been dealing with. And that's the whole point of me having had put up these videos and to be doing this series, to try to bring some comfort to people, because I never wanted to make a whole bunch of money from my book. It would be nice to, just edit videos and write and draw and, just do that for a living and not have to do my other jobs just to make ends meet. It would be really nice, but at the end of the day, money hasn't been my reason behind writing these books. Money hasn't been the reason behind me publishing these books. And so that is why I decided to do what I am currently doing. And I am also working on some things for my Patreon. So if you guys are interested in becoming a Patreon, I will hopefully have some things up for you guys as well. And I am going to lower the prices hugely, because I want it to where if you do want to check out my Patreon, it will only cost you $1. And I know for some people that $1 might be a whole lot, but also know that I appreciate that $1 because I understand that you may not be able to afford to do that $1. And if you can't, it's fine. Nothing against you, and please just enjoy the series and find some comfort, and hopefully it gets you through this crazy end of the year that we are dealing with. So please take care, be safe, and I love you.